Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it is your boy, Sam Gilstrap. This is the Ghost Lights Podcast, episode 42, with our amazing guest, Stephen Weitz. Hello, Stephen.
42 is the answer to everything.
That's right, baby.
Yeah. I feel extra special now.
You are special. I mean, you're joining us via Zoom. This is technically episode 2 of the Ghost Lights Podcast in this new incarnation.
Well, welcome to the future.
That's right. We are sitting in the future. I know it looks like a dingy single man's bedroom, but it is not. I've got pillows here just for added comfort because in the future, comfort is paramount.
That's all we have left.
That's all we have left. Today's unofficial sponsor at the Sadly Manor, where I am dining, is Basil Hayden's on the Rocks. What do you got for us out there?
Avery IPA. Support your local breweries.
Indeed, sir. Do that if you
we
can.
were getting ready to film, we had a little tragedy. We had a loss of a glass of whiskey, which in these sad times is precious cargo. So
Yes.
pour one out for my whiskey into my mouth.
Yeah, definitely. Don't spill this on your bed.
No.
Folks, our producer, as always, in this new age of the Ghost Lights, is Dan Ribb. He may chime in should he feel the mood to do so. Otherwise, he is basically the facilitator with the mostest. I know it doesn't rhyme, nor is it catchy.
Yeah, you told me I could chime in as the voice of God last time, so we'll see if I do that.
That's right. The God mic. He is a stage manager, and he knows how to use it.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, Stephen, before we dive into the Ghost Lights Podcast, how do you think your Eagles are doing in this weird time of not actually meeting with draft picks? If you're an
It's
NFL
so weird that like any of that is happening. Like I can't. First of all, it's so strange to not have any sports on television. Like you don't realize how, as a sports fan, how reliant you are until it's completely gone, and then you realize what a stupid junkie you are. So that's bizarre to begin with, but then like there's still things happening. So, and you can't not look. All you have time to do every day is read the news and whatnot. And when you're trying to avoid the other stuff, and you're reading sports news, and it's like, wait a second, people are handing out $40 million contracts to football players without having any knowledge of if there's going to be a football season, of what the economy is going to look like. Will anyone be able to afford a football ticket or NFL Live package? It's such a bizarre disconnect. Having said that, I think the Eagles have been prudent and cautious and addressed some areas of need. Still curious what they're going to do at wide receiver. I'd like to see Rashad Perriman come on board, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But I think we've made some decent steps.
Who did Perriman play for last season?
The Bucks. He was all they had left standing, and when Mike Evans got hurt.
Yeah. Well, and we all know who they signed.
Yeah. If you've got those guys in your dynasty pool, that looks more interesting for sure.
It really does. Hopefully, there's a season.
Exactly. Otherwise, we might have to do it like, old school style. I used to play this game when I was a kid called APBA football, APBA. It's an acronym for something, but it was a game that each team had a deck of cards for each player,
Okay.
and then like you rolled die based on the play you called, and then you looked on the card to see what the die roll meant, and it was like +4 yards, -3 yards. If you rolled double sixes, it was like 66-yard touchdown. And it was the like nerds paradise football game when I was Dungeons and Dragons kid. It was fantastic. So we may have to go back to that and simulate seasons based on ABPA football.
Absolutely. If you can forward us like a spreadsheet of all the rules, that'd be great.
Oh, I just checked the website the other day, bizarrely, and they're still in business. So.
Oh, ABLA.
ABPA, ABPA, I believe.
Oh, we'll have to definitely look that up. Dan, write that down in your notes.
Noted.
All right, here it is. Stephen, theater. How did it happen?
Well, the Greeks began. I assume you mean personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started in
Yes.
theater pretty young.
Okay.
I played Santa Claus in second grade.
Wow. You already
Uh,
had the beard in second grade, huh?
no, but I had the fat, so I think that was the casting choice. I think was like,
Okay.
who really is gonna look rotund in this red suit? But yeah, I remember the whole like little backstage like gimmick ladder that I could scooch down to jump down the chimney.
Mm.
It was pretty high tech for second grade. So that was my I believe oh, what was her last name? Gretchen. I can't remember her last name. Played the kid I was visiting.
Mm.
There were some reindeer involved, so that was my debut. And then I was pretty active in middle school in such vehicles as Vaudeville's My Home and others. And I was really fortunate. I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania called Bloomsburg, but I was really lucky that both my high school had a very robust theater program that was led by a woman named Deanne Castile, who really touched a lot of kids' lives in a profoundly meaningful way through the theater program that she ran, which was
What
also
grade
very
was that?
good. It was sorry.
What grade was that?
That was in high school, so that was
Okay.
9th through 12th. So I kind of had that on one side, and then my wife Rebecca and I grew up in the same town. We were both very lucky to have a professional theater company in our small town called the Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble, which was founded by a bunch of Northwestern grads who kind of followed their role model, whose name was Elvina Krause, who was kind of a famous teacher back in the day. And she retired to Bloomsburg, and they said, "Well, we want to keep learning." And she said, "Well, if you want to move to Bloomsburg, I'll keep teaching you." And a bunch of them did, and they started this company, and they're in their 40 something season now. And a lot of the original ensemble members are just starting to think about retirement and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had that on the other hand of shows that we went to with my school or with my family and education programs that I was a part of there. Both Rebecca and I went back and performed there. She directed there when we were older. But, for a small, mostly rural town in Pennsylvania, we were really blessed with a lot of, great theatrical influences. And that's kind of, I started in musicals. I was The Plant and Little Shop of Horrors and Don Quixote and Man of La Mancha. And so that was kind of my roots. And then kind of went from there.
Oh. What was it about theater that grabbed a hold of you? Was it just something that you were good at and you were like, "Fuck yeah, I'll do this," or was it
Partly it was it's funny because if you kind of look at the person I was in high school, in some ways it's a microcosm of the person I grew up to be. I was an athlete, in some ways I had one foot in the jock camp. I played football, I played baseball, I was on the swimming team for a while, and the other foot I had this creative outlet, and it was music and theater. I would say my involvement in theater may in part have been driven by my music experience. I was pretty active in chorus and some small madrigals and things like that, and our theater program was kind of heavily musical driven.
Mhm.
So I suspect if you went back and tracked it, you'd find that my musical involvement kind of drove it as much as anything. But I think that in the same way that running a theater company and being a sports fan and BSing about fantasy football fills two different, being a political junkie kind of fills different buckets in your life. And I think that the theater and music and things like that did that for me when I was in high school. I was also really, in looking back at it, there were pressures to pick, but just about everybody I knew in high school that was involved in the arts was also involved in athletics or student council, or I mean, it was pretty multi-dimensional, and I don't think kids necessarily have that luxury anymore of not having to specialize,
Mhm.
but I remember, just loving that kind of mix of people that you got to kind of jump back and forth between, and there were people who didn't understand it, of course, or didn't appreciate it, and on both sides, and that's kind of life.
Yeah. Have you noticed that as you've created this, I mean, a career, opened your own theater, that you see that those types of mixes of people remaining constant, or
It's interesting. That's a good question. I think that as you get deeper down the road, like any field, I'm sure you tend to winnow some of um, the dabblers, the dilettantes, so
Mhm.
you tend to end up with more of the committed people and the folks who are really invested in it. And those people do tend to be more specialists,
Yeah.
they tend to be really focused on their craft and focused on their art. And, as you move through college and grad school and into the professional world and thing like that, I think you do see that kind of narrowing. Um, for one, and maybe you feel this way too. I've always wondered why there wasn't the sports has always been such a big part of my life, and I've always wondered why there wasn't more overlap. For
Same.
a person like you, I know who loves sports. There's 50 who hate it or don't want to pay any attention to it, and I've always felt like look, sports is the it's one of the realest played out in real time dramas that we have in our life, and I've
Mhm.
never understood why more theater people weren't like, there's something compelling about that in a way that we try and capture in what we do on stage. So I've never quite put together why there wasn't more overlap there, but
Yeah, I find that, I mean, I think there's like a culture thing. Like my mom hated my love affair with football and sports because the people that picked on her when she was in
yeah,
band and so on and so forth were all athletes. They're all the jocks. And so, I mean, from that perspective, I totally get it. It was so surprising for me, like when I was at Metro and I found a theater friend who loved the Broncos, and we would talk ad nauseum about what they were doing and how they performed this last weekend, and why the hell were we the only two people that were watching the games on Sundays when we had a show at 6 p.m., like why that mattered. And I was so thankful for that guy because it made that was really my first place where, like, oh, maybe I do belong. Like, not I can do the job, sure, to this at this collegiate level, but then, like, with the people around, like, oh, there's I kind of fit here.
yeah.
He makes me feel like that. And I mean, it's sports is so entwined in everything. Like what you were saying before we really got it dove in here, it's what we're dealing with now. That's the first news I check. And maybe that's a bad thing because you should be as up to date as possible with what's going on in your state, your community, and then the American world as a whole. But yeah, it's like um there's
It might be the second news that I check, but you can't.
oh wait.
You gotta find something to free your brain a little bit. If
Mhm.
you bury yourself in all the current news and whatnot, it's too much.
Yeah.
Nobody can kind of process it all and deal with it all. And so having a thing like that, as I said, as weird as it is that people are doling out contracts and
Right.
talking about who's a legit Super Bowl contender seems so strange. But it's all right. I think for both of those things to exist simultaneously.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, especially if that is our entree into like certain forms of drama,
Yeah, like
being tied into a team and that kind of thing. And like, yeah,
you hear so many people talking about, and I think our world is closer to it because these are our friends and these are our comrades and our colleagues. And you hear so many people talking about how the arts is serving as a ray of light for people in this time, and how this will awaken a new appreciation for people of what it's like to live without the arts. And I think that that's all true, and uh, a silver lining to what we're going through. In the same way, other people have different outlets. Other people continue to find that ray of light through sports or through different art forms and things like that.
Mhm.
And none of them are less valid, or through faith, or through any number of things. None of them are less valid than another. Whatever I think brings you a touchstone in this storm to go, hey, this grounds me a little bit. This reminds me that there's a community of people out there like me. Um,
Mhm.
that's a good thing. That we all need that right now.
Absolutely. Um, with that, how do you feel your place with Betsy kind of taps into that community in Boulder? Like, or is it just Boulder, like you could do Betsy anywhere, or is it something that's specific to that location?
I mean, it's both. In one sense, you could do it anywhere, and that the shows we do, they're not restricted to the people in Boulder or the people that surround our community.
Mhm.
I'd like to think that our shows could serve a broad variety of people in lots of different communities. At the same time, that's we always, since very very early on in our history, have always thought of our audience as the Betsy family, and we refer to them that way a lot. And in many ways, that's true. You cultivate a relationship with people over a long time. We've had subscribers now who've seen, we have a group of people who've seen every production we've done for 14 years.
Wow.
And at that point, you do have an intimate relationship with those people, even if you don't know the intimate details of each other's lives. You've shared enough hours and you've shared enough emotional journeys that uh, there is something there that can't be replicated. So we're very conscious of what our community is going through, not just with us, but all of the people who support us support other companies, and to go from the thriving art scene that we have to zero essentially overnight is
Mhm.
really hard for people who for whom that's a big part of their life.
Yeah.
So we're doing everything we can to think about different ways to communicate with them and different ways to provide them with um, a little, like I said, a little ray of light in all this. We can't produce a full show. We can't rehearse. We can't do all those things, but we can still tap into the creative and talented people we know, and hopefully reach out to them and just provide a little
Mhm.
goose in these times, because whatever form you get it in, we need it. And it's just going to get harder, as the deeper we get into this and the longer it goes on.
Mhm.
People's sense of isolation and people's longing for some kind of contact is going to get more acute, and we want to be there because these are our people.
Absolutely. Have you felt that the power that theater, specifically this art form, has it changed for you? Do you find that the value has grown as you've eh, progressed your career, or is it something that's remained constant for you? Like once it grabbed hold, you're like, oh shit, this is a different level.
I think it's shifted more than grown or lessened. One of the things I always remember about being a young theater student and being surrounded by other, excited, wide-eyed college practitioners was, we all believed and we all said and we were all told that theater can change the world.
Mhm.
And as you get a little older, I think you come to understand the world a little bit more. Or at least my experience was that, nah, I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think theater can change the world. But what you also come to understand is theater can change individuals. Theater can
Mhm.
really profoundly affect single people or small groups of people in profound ways, and people can change the world. So, by extension, theater can change the world, but only if we really affect people in a meaningful way and they carry it forward and enact change in the world.
Mhm.
So I think that's the shift that I've seen in my life. Of I'm not trying to solve the problems of the world. I'm not trying to uh, highlight things we all know to be true about the world. I'm trying to shake people's perceptions in a way that allows them to go, huh, I never thought about it that way, or I never thought about a particular person's journey that way. Um, because that thing, there's probably going to be a lot more of those. I should try and close out of that.
Oh,
Because that, I think, is where our real power lies. just in terms of, hey, 1,000 people come see a show, maybe 900 of them enjoy it, and maybe 10 of them leave feeling like they actually had some kind of profound change happen within them, and that's all right. That means you did well, because those people become your advocates and your extension into the community, and hopefully that leads to positive change. And I think that's got to be our goal.
Absolutely. Have you is there like a personal moment for you where you felt that shift come? Where you're like, "Oh, it's it's more detailed than just broad strokes world fixing."
Not specifically, but I definitely remember as we sort of progressed through our company. I think it's also a result of uh, going from kind of younger, wide-eyed freelance artists to, hey, we have a company and a responsibility, and uh, different things that we have to take care of in order to keep this operation going, and people who count on us. And I think that helps shift your philosophy as well. Of it's when I was a freelance actor and director, it was a little more carefree. Of I just go in and do my thing and have fun and let my creativity run wild. And there's not the same responsibility attached to it of, hey, I have a group of people, employees and patrons and artists who rely on us. And therefore, it requires a little shift in thinking, a little shift in perspective as far as
Mhm.
what we're actually doing here and why it's important.
Yeah. Then that hasn't like you don't feel like it's like forced you to pull back on what you try and put out there?
No, I think it's actually the opposite in a lot of ways, in that
Nice.
you it hones your focus on who it's for.
Mhm.
I was always a little bit of a schizophrenic actor, in that I kind of had a director's instinct from the time I was, in college, and it was hard to be an actor in a room and not be looking around with a sort of bigger eye, going, "Oh, wow, does that make sense?" Or,
Mhm.
does that all tie together the way we think it does? Um, and I think as you adopt kind of the mindset I was just talking about, it makes you hyper aware of who it's for.
Mhm.
And it's for them, it's for the audience, it's for the people who come to spend their time with us and spend their resources with us. I think for some of us, uh, me included, acting can be kind of a selfish craft of my experience and my journey. And is this honest? And does it feel true to me? Um, all of which is important as part of the craft, but not if you lose sight of the fact that it's for them. What we do is we play for them.
Mhm.
And if they aren't getting the juice, if they aren't getting the meat, then it doesn't matter what we feel or how the experience is for us. So if anything, I think that realization of why we're here is to try and change people and affect people and make them less codified and calcified, forces you to remember who you're doing it for.
Mm. Absolutely. That's a great point. When I know one of my biggest struggles, especially when I was young, and even now, I know I get bogged down in the same things that affected me when I was a young actor, fresh out of college. Was this whole like I always thought about the show as like a bigger picture, as opposed to breaking it down and trying to be focused on what my job was, and for lack of a better phrasing, just doing my job, role specific. And once I got into that place, the performance stuff was easier. But then when I directed later on in life, is then you had to pull yourself out of that whole mindset. It's helpful to be able to break down a character or a moment individually, but then to like disseminate that, focus the entire group at this like this is the vision, this is the theme, for lack of a better metaphor, and then like try and getting them to buy into that. And I think that's where you get precision acting, is when you got them all bought in.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying is exactly, that's a great director skill, is to be able to break down something into what's the function of this character? What's the function of this moment? They
Mhm.
all serve a greater whole, and we have to be able to break them into subsets of why are they here and what do they do. Um, it can be, it can feel surgical in a way if you let it get too far, but at the
Mhm.
same time, it's I think it's vital to, when you sit in the room as a director, you are the audience. You are the person crafting the journey for the audience and heightening this or lessening that or shifting focus there. And you can only do those things if you have that same understanding that you were talking about of what is the purpose? What is the function? Why did the playwright put that? Why did
Mhm.
they put these words in this character's mouth at this moment?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because that's what allows you to weave the narrative for the audience, and to guide the actors in weaving that narrative, as well as your tech team and all that kind of thing. So I think that's a really important skill, of being able to kind of pull the threads apart so you can see what the weave is and put it back together for the audience.
Mm. For you, when you get a new script, like, okay, this is on the season, this is up, this is the show I'm directing first. Like, what excites you about that? Like, take me through that process. Like, what gets your juices flowing when you've got that new paperback in your hand?
I tend to direct more from a place of terror. So I kind of try and procrastinate as long as possible, and then let it overwhelm me to the point where I hope my creativity will bail me out. Um, but seriously, I'm not. I'm a little bit of a marinator. I like to just kind of read it and read it and read it and let when I do that, certain things start to resonate with me, and I'll go, "Oh, that phrase I love in Act Two actually connects back to that thing that somebody says in Act One," and that's where the kind of web starts to form for me. And then I'll go through and read it just specifically for props or specifically for lights, of just kind of thinking about what's happening at this moment in the visual world of the play, or what's happening at this moment in the oral world of the play. Um, I don't. It's funny. I had a great acting teacher or a great directing teacher in college, who taught me a lot, and he was very meticulous and kind of about process breaking down scripts and really detailed. Sorry about that. I thought I turned that thing off.
No, no
A
worries.
really detailed process of um, script analysis and things like that. And my process tends to be much more um, fluid than that. I want to kind of feel it and live in it and let things percolate to the surface for me. And that's exciting. I often describe my process of directing as mile markers. Like I usually, when I start a process, I have really clear visions of specific moments of like, this end of a scene or this end of an act or the way the lights move through this particular moment. And then it becomes an exercise in stitching those together and finding consistency.
Mhm.
So that's just kind of how it works in my brain. I imagine directing is a really hard thing to teach, having never done it except on an individual level with other people I'm working with.
Mhm.
If you have I know other directors who have really codified processes of tabs and color coded and all kinds of
Yep.
stuff. And my artistic brain kind of just doesn't work that way. So it's a more fluid kind of organic thing for me. And the blessing, I think, is that for me anyway, and I can only speak to my own process, is that it allows more space for the other artists when they enter the process. I have a couple things picked out, and often those things are kind of not malleable because they're pretty entrenched in my head.
Mhm.
Um, but it does leave a good amount of room for people to bring their understanding of a character or their arc, and then you kind of you mash all that together and go, how do I make their vision fit with my vision or tweak my vision to accommodate theirs. And that's the exciting part. That's rehearsal's the best part. That's one of the reasons I shifted from being predominantly an actor to almost exclusively a director and producer is rehearsal's the fun part. Once you open, performing's just kind of like, the dog and pony show. Discovery and rehearsing and finding new things with your fellow artists, that's the part that makes me excited.
How important for you is that to have like a group of people that is willing to contribute? Because I mean, I've been involved in processes where the director's been open to ideas and no one's either willing to share or able to share them if they
I mean,
even have an idea.
Hey, whenever somebody asks me what the secret to my success is, whatever success that might be, is pick good things and surround yourself with good people, because that's 90% of it. If you have a great play and great people working on it, you should come out of it with a pretty good product in the end, unless you're really fucking it up. So I've been fortunate to not really be in that situation of feeling like I have to pull teeth or drag people down a road with me, because I've been blessed with a community here that is full of incredibly talented and imaginative people. That doesn't mean you don't butt heads or disagree or see things in different ways. That's part of the process too. But I can't remember a process where I didn't feel like people were in it to participate, and that's awesome. There of course is a line where you feel like, okay, that's enough input for today, but for the most part, you don't get there too often.
Nice. We've only had that issue that one time. I'm sorry, by the way, that I scratched your car with my keys. That was out of line.
You got to express yourself, man. You got to let it out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lie, folks. That did not actually happen. I'm very, very shy when it comes to those things. Oh man. So was there a decision you had mentioned like you went exclusively directing as opposed from theater? What was that shift for you? Did you just felt like it was something that was naturally occurring? I had more of a director's mindset. I wanted to get into that, or was it a decision you felt was made for you?
It both. It was, I was making it in the sense of being an actor was becoming increasingly frustrating to me. Not that I didn't enjoy it. I think I'm all right at it. I don't, I'm not a world beater, but I think I'm okay at it. It just got increasingly frustrating to stand there in rehearsals and not be like, hey, are we really gonna do it like this? Like, we're not gonna fix this before opening. And frankly, I may have actually said that a few times, and that probably didn't earn me many points. So that got to the point where it was just it was getting less rewarding for me, and it was interfering with my ability to be creative and my ability to be in the moment. And those things are vital when you're an actor. So part of it was my self-awareness that those things were happening, and then part of it was also kind of dictated to me by the fact that our company was growing and it was taking more time, and I didn't, the day was, I remember we would finish our Betsy show in April or whatever and go away and do the Shakespeare Festival or whatever was happening in the summer and not really think about it for months at a time. And it got to the point where that wasn't an option. And as my role as a producer and artistic director expanded, the idea of, being in rehearsal every day and being at performance 6 days a week just didn't work with that model. So it was a combination of both, of kind of personal awareness and the necessity of growing a company.
How do you feel the company stands with you now, as not taking into account of what COVID's probably doing to you in terms of not producing stuff, but like where has it grown for you in this? What season number is this?
We've wrapped up our 14th season now. I was going to say we're about to wrap up our 14th season, but I guess we've wrapped it up at this point. Yeah, it's grown into this fantastic and rewarding mission that we have as far as the kind of plays we do. This group of artists that we work with, both from within our ensemble and just from the general community. So those have all been fantastic um, things that we've got. I'm trying to turn that off. Sorry, I don't even know if I can. I don't even know how to do that.
Is it through your computer?
Oh, maybe I'll turn it off. Play sound effects. I'll turn that off.
There you go.
See if that works. So it's been a tremendous growth as far as that. As a lot of folks watching this probably know, my wife Rebecca is our managing director and co-founded the company with me. It's been a tremendous personal journey for us to grow this thing together. In a lot of ways, it was kind of our first child. And you take a lot of pride in that. You take a lot of pride in the people you've touched. We got a tremendous email from a longtime subscriber of ours when we announced that the show was not going to happen and whatnot. And you realize that you've been part of someone's life for 14 years and they value you in the same way they value a friend or a family member. And that's really rewarding, and it makes you feel like it was worth the effort. So yeah, it's been a great personal journey. It's like everything else. It comes with its challenges. It comes with its dark days of, good Lord, what am I doing? Spending all my time on this, and the things that you sacrifice, that all theater people sacrifice. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. It shapes who you are, and the current moment is a great reminder of the community you forge. When people are needy and when people are looking for comfort and looking for contact, and you realize how many people you have because they're members of your audience or members of your ensemble or artists that you work with like you, or just members of the theater community. That means something when you realize that, hey, that effort that went into that crafted all this, and that's powerful.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's when you talk about like you receiving that email and really get a different understanding for like the type of, I don't know, like connection you have to the world outside of your art. Like people look forward to the season announcements. They want to be there on opening night. They want to donate when those things happen. Like if you can if you really, by putting forth quality and making yourself available to some of these people who are there for you over and over and over again, like you really get that sense of community. Like I think, yeah, it's in the name, community theater, but that's that should be like the mission statement.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that the situation, that we're all experiencing also makes you realize how broad our impact can really be, and to fight the urge to make it insular. The theater has always been kind of a semi-closed community, in that we practice this kind of weird wizardry that the general population doesn't understand. I mean, you've had this conversation 100 times, I'm sure, where you talk to people about what tech is, or what,
Yeah.
and people are just like mystified that this process exists. So we do tend to kind of hunker down into our little community and rely on each other, which is great in its own way. But this situation, I think, reminds us that we have allegiances and we have responsibilities that extend far beyond that. And not that we're not part of the world at large, and not that we don't have relationships beyond the theater. But it's just a reminder that this little wooden O that we work in is not the end all be all, and there's a big old world out there that we can be a part of.
Absolutely. What we do here is we shed light on a part of the condition. We exemplify it, if only for a couple hours an evening when we perform it. But we're still trying to make sense of it all when we leave the stage, and like for ourselves. It's not just,
Yeah.
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 A production is
Our
not like an answer.
experience, that if our human experience is going to be as rich as it can be, then it needs to be as diverse and far reaching as anyone else's.
Absolutely. Stephen, what do you wish that piece of advice was, that ghost light was left on for you, what do you wish you had heard when you first started out? And that could be two-tiered, like before you, when you were a kid playing Santa, and then when you were like, "Oh, I'm gonna open up my own theater company."
Oh, I mean, so I wish somebody had said run, it's not too
Right?
late. You can still run. I don't know. That's a great question. Let me kind of minimize that a little bit and say I think that in a microcosm, what the current COVID experience and seeing what's happening and seeing the effect that's gonna have on people and companies and art forms and all kinds of things, and thinking about loved ones near and far and how it affects them, and I mean, to really profound things of like, there are going to be people who are meaningful to us who we'll never see again, that because of the situation, even if someone should get sick, you won't be able to be there,
Mhm.
things like that. And I think that that's a really good reminder that what we do as artists, what we do in the theater is profound, it's important, it has far-reaching implications for a lot of people, but it's not the end of the world. At the end of the day, what we do is we make plays to give people relief in the world, to make the journey through life a little bit more manageable than it might have been otherwise, or a little deeper, or a little more rich than it might have been otherwise. But the personal relationships that we have with people, the friendships in our families and things like that are still um, the ultimate thing, and I think it's easy when you're in the midst of trying to make a career in the arts to feel like if you don't give it 150% that you're not doing it right. And I think it's a good reminder for us as artists to go, yeah, that's all well and good, but you can't do that at the expense of living life. You
Mhm.
know, I think a lot of people. This is going to be a real awakening of what it means to smell the roses, because particularly in America, our style of life is really caught up in this rat race,
Mhm.
um, and we in the theater are not exempt from that at all. So, if there's something I would love someone to have told me or reminded me or just kicked me in the head every now and then and reminded me, it's that. Uh, don't take it for granted, to connect with the people around you, to be a member of the big parade and not just our little theater parade.
Absolutely. I think you said it best. I mean, the relationships in life are important. That those, for a lot of us, that should take precedent. And it's when we're on stage, so often when we have a question about a moment, we go back to the relationship.
Yeah, that's
When
that's fodder. Yeah, that's where you get the good stuff to bring on stage, or as a director uh, to inject into a moment. It's the reality of our shared experience that infuses our craft
Mhm.
power.
Nice. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us for episode 42 here
My
on the.
pleasure, man. I'm glad I got a good number.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a strong place to be. Before we do our sign off, you still got any TP over at the rehearsal
I
space?
actually, yeah, I'm pretty flush with TP, pun intended. So if you or any of your viewers get hard up, you let me know. I'm
Well,
preparing.
well, I got you here. My mom is down to like 3 rolls. You mind if I
Okay.
steal some?
No, I'm game, man. You let me know. We'll set up a pickup.
Perfect,
The
perfect.
white
I'll
market is flowing here at the White's house.
nice. I will definitely send you a text soon then.
All
All
right, man.
right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is War by the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. That is our trade theme song as we continue rolling around the Ghost Lights podcast with your boy Sam Gilstrap and special guest Stephen Weitz. Dan, take us out.
Cheers, y'all. Be safe.
You too.